On Friday, Democrats from the House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis held a press briefing promoting the Inflation Reduction Act. Calling it a vital step in combating climate change, the group of progressive lawmakers touted the bill's climate-focused provisions that seek to limit carbon output and transition the U.S. to a greener economy. After the bill passed the Senate, it won a great deal of praise from environmental groups. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer even called it, quote, one of the defining feats of the 21st century that has, quote, changed the world. Conservative opponents of the bill say it does not curb, but in fact increases inflation, and have dubbed its climate provisions the Green New Deal Light. In order to pass the House, nearly every single Democratic vote is needed.
All right. Are you ready for some climate action? Well, welcome everyone to the era of clean energy innovation that will lower costs, create jobs, and make our communities safer and more resilient. Democrats in the House and advocates across America are central to the progress that we will make today. I can tie every clean energy, environmental justice, innovative cost-saving provision in the Inflation Reduction Act to the ideas and work of House Democrats and advocates. How do I know? We created the roadmap. In 2019, Speaker Nancy Pelosi created the House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis and tasked us with developing an action plan to solve the climate crisis. It was based upon a broad outreach effort all across America. We started with student leaders in our first hearing here on Capitol Hill. We went out and consulted with innovators, with scientists, with environmental justice communities, with farmers, the faith community, unions, insurers, doctors, and nurses, businesses, and we released what has been described as the most detailed and well thought out plan for addressing climate change that has ever been part of U.S. politics. Our Solving the Climate Crisis Action Plan, a congressional action plan for the clean energy economy and a healthy, resilient, and just America. More than 700 recommendations were contained within our Climate Crisis Action Plan, and many of them will be passed here today. Building on the progress that we have made so far in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, in the CHIPS Act passed and signed by President Biden just last week, and our government funding appropriations bills. Every opportunity that we had, we passed clean energy and climate legislation into law. But today, this is the big enchilada that will set us on our pathway to a clean energy future. This was done particularly with the leadership of members of Congress from all across America, boosted by advocates like you and communities that have demanded action. From the committee, Congressman Don McEachin, the leader on environmental justice. Congresswoman Julia Brownley of California, clean aviation fuels. Of course, the climate champion, Sean Casten of Illinois for clean energy innovation. Jared Huffman of California, electrify postal vehicles and protect public lands. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, powering and using the power of the oceans and protecting the oceans. Congresswoman Escobar of Texas, a champion for clean energy and resilience when it comes to national security. Congressman Mike Levin, scientific advancement and coastal protection. Congressman Joe Neguse to address wildfire risk and protect coastal resources. But it wasn't just the members of the Climate Committee. It was every single member in the House Democratic Caucus who brought climate action based upon what they were hearing from communities and advocates back home. like Don Beyer, who had from the Ways and Means Committee, who championed smart tax credit investments and protection of endangered species. Debbie Dingell, who is there to protect union workers and make sure we're building the electric vehicles of the future. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who led the charge to stand up to big oil misinformation and to protect our democracy. Climate champion Val Demings of Florida, who works every day to reduce costs, reduce pollution, fight for clean air and water, and to build safer communities back home. Deborah Ross, who is a champion for offshore renewable resources. Melanie Stansberry, a leader in the Congress for safe drinking water and protection of energy producing communities as they make the transition. As we prepare to vote on the Inflation Reduction Act today, this is a reminder we have a lot more to do. We're building on the action of local communities, states, businesses, folks like you all across America, all across the world, to chart a new course for the clean energy future. But now we can look ourselves in the mirror and know that it's the United States of America that can lead the world on solving the climate crisis while lowering the costs for our people, creating good paying jobs, and building safer, healthier, and more resilient communities. And finally, know that we're not done. We must do more. We must do more. But let the hope and energy that springs from our action today be the light that shines the way forward into a healthy, resilient, and just America and a more livable planet Earth. I want you to hear directly from the climate champions who are standing here today as we're poised to take this historic step. I'm going to turn it over next to a true climate champion, someone you all know and love from the hot FERC summer of years past. True climate champion, the man who sets the standard on clean energy innovation, my good friend, Congressman Sean Casten of Illinois.
Thank you to my hype woman, my chairwoman, Kathy Castor, for all your good work. Today is a great day to be an American. It is a great day to be an American because of the bill that we're about to pass that is going to put us on a trajectory to lower CO2 emissions in the United States by 40% in 2030. It's going to put us on a trajectory to put a whole lot more money back in Americans' pockets, $700 to $1,000 a year. And I got to explain this slowly for some of my colleagues across on the other side of the aisle. But the best way to lower your gasoline price is to put a car in your driveway so you don't have to pay for gasoline. The best way to lower your natural gas exposure is to put a solar panel on your roof so you don't have to pay for electricity made from natural gas or from coal. It's massively anti-inflationary. We're going to do all of that today. But I think there's a bigger reason why this is a particularly sort of patriotic day to be proud to be an American. And that's because last November, a number of us up here, we went to Glasgow to represent the United States. We went there after being in Madrid the year before, trying to defend the United States from having pulled out of Paris. And we went back to Glasgow saying, we're back in Paris. We understand the science. We are pushing for what is necessary. We've written the Build Back Better Act. We're going to pass it. We were fired up. And almost every reporter who sat there at that press conference said, but what about the filibuster? What happens if you lose control in the midterms? Can you actually get through the Senate? And there was this sense that they admired our ambition, but they'd been burned too many times. And what's going to happen today is we have the ability to go back and say that the United States matters. We take this seriously. We're not done. Lowering CO2 by 40% means we got 60% to go. Limiting people's exposure to fossil energy by 40% means we've got 60% to go. Putting ourselves in a position where we are credible again in the world means we are now positioned where we can potentially claim the leadership role that the world so desperately wants us to play. So let's do a little celebration today. Let's dance. Let's recognize that this is the single biggest climate bill that Congress has ever passed. And then let's get back to work tomorrow because we have more to do. So thank you. And I'm now going to turn it over to my comrade in arms, who I first met because when I was first running for Congress, I got a call from this guy who said, there's two people who have the courage to run for Congress on climate change. It's you and Mike Levin, and I hope you both win. Mike Levin, my comrade in arms.
Good job, buddy. Good job. Good job. Good job. Thank you to my dear friend Sean Casten. This is a historic day.
It's a day of celebration for all of us who've been fighting for years, or in many cases decades, to address the climate crisis and protect our planet for future generations. I am incredibly proud to stand up here with my colleagues on the Select Committee in the Climate Crisis who are tasked with leading this fight for climate action. In fact, it was just under a month ago that we stood up here, this very spot, with climate advocates, and we demanded that Senator Manchin and others return to the negotiating table to pass a reconciliation bill with climate action at its core. I spoke then about my 2 young children and the world that we're going to leave behind for them and for their children. Protecting our planet for them, for all of our children, is the reason that I first ran for office, to make the world a safer, healthier place for future generations. And when I left home earlier this week for Washington, D.C., to come and pass this bill today, I gave both my kids a big hug, filled with more hope than ever before in my entire adult lifetime about the planet that we're going to leave behind. Everyone here knows that this historic progress did not come easy. It's the result of years of grassroots advocacy, filled with both moments of hope and many letdowns along the way. It's also the result of the work of the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis under the leadership of our fantastic chair, Kathy Castor. The Climate Crisis report that we all put out in June of 2020 laid the foundation for the historic climate action that we're passing today. Many of the provisions in this bill mirror proposals that we outlined as part of that report. I'm proud the Inflation Reduction Act specifically includes parts of a number of bills I introduced in the Congress. One provision will help end giveaways of our public lands to fossil fuel companies and ensure that taxpayers receive a fair return on any private profit that they make. Another will eliminate non-competitive leasing for oil and gas sales, raise annual rental rates, and increase the minimum bid for public lands, because our public lands belong to the public. They belong to the public, not corporate polluters. The Inflation Reduction Act also includes provisions similar to my legislation providing direct pay for certain clean energy tax credits, which are critical to expedite the adoption of clean energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I'm also glad that it includes investments that I fought for to prioritize water conservation and ecosystem restoration across the West as we deal with unprecedented drought conditions. There is so much more in this bill that's going to combat the climate crisis, lower energy costs, and supercharge our clean energy economy in the decades to come. Finally, to the young people across this country, I know a few of you are here. I see you in the back. You need to know that for all you who demanded that we take action, we saw you, we heard you, and we are celebrating with you today. This is a big moment for our country and for our planet. But the job isn't done. We must do more, but this is truly a historic step. Would not be possible without your support. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I'm going to introduce my dear friend who does such a fantastic job from the great state of Colorado, Joe Neguse.
Well, what an exciting day, right? Who's excited? In particular, and Sean mentioned this, and my colleague Mike Levin from California as well, there are a group of members who were elected in 2018 when Democrats took the majority on a promise that we made to the American people, that we would treat this crisis as the existential threat that it is. And I could not be more proud that today we have begun to deliver on that promise that we made to the American people 4 years ago. I have to say a word about our chair. In the opening months of the 116th Congress in 2019, the Speaker impaneled the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. 2 years of hearings, debate, discussion, research, traveling across this great country, visiting with experts, community members, and stakeholders of every shape, of every size, of every specialty, culminated in this report. There were a lot of people who doubted our ability to convert this report into legislation that would be enacted by this body. But there was one person who never doubted it, and that was the chairwoman of the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, Kathy Castor, who never gave up. And it's to the chair that we have our gratitude today to know that we will be, in just a few short hours, passing the most significant climate change legislation ever considered by the United States Congress in the history of our country. It's a big deal. Why does it matter? I represent Colorado. In the last 40 years, climate-induced disasters have cost our state $55 billion. Historic drought, unprecedented flash floods, devastating wildfires. Each one of them a glaring reminder of the need for us to expedite our future into a renewable energy future, and that transition that is so critically important for every American in our country. This bill, in my view, meets the moment. And one of the reasons that we are here, as Representative Levin so eloquently stated, is because of the grassroots efforts that were made by so many people to get us to this point. To the League of Conservation Voters, to the young people, the students, community activists, so many who raised their voices and never refused to ultimately give up, even when it looked like passage of this particular bill and the bills before it were in doubt. We couldn't be more grateful for your efforts and for raising your voices in support of this truly incredible and historic legislation. We intend to make sure that it passes later today, and I couldn't be more excited to see President Biden sign it into law. And then the real work begins on implementation, and we're going to need your help on that as well. So with that, I want to turn it over to my distinguished colleague from the Commonwealth of Virginia, a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee, who I will just say we had a rigorous debate on the Rules Committee just yesterday about this very bill and his ability to parry back some of the ludicrous attacks coming from the opposition. I couldn't have been more impressed. And that man is Don Beyer. So let's give it up for Don Beyer.
Thank you so much. It's been said again and again that this is the most important environmental bill we've ever passed. But I just wanted to give it a huge shout out to Kathy Castor, whom the Speaker wisely chose to lead the special committee, and all the work you and your committee have done. Thank you, Kathy. It's terrific. Yeah, I was in Glasgow 26 with many of these folks just 8-9 months ago, and there was a sense of hope, but also there was this bleakness that if we don't do something right away for the greatest existential crisis of this century, of our lives, that then no wonder so many young people are in despair. Anxiety and depression, the highest it's ever been among our young people. Because you look and say, we haven't done anything. There's an old proverb that says, fall down 5 times, get up 6. Well, I just want to thank the people who came back again and again and again and said, we're not going to give up. We are going to make this happen. And now today, there are pivotal times in our lives we can remember where we were. Remember today, because this is the day that this environment turns. One of the scariest numbers coming out of the UN is that by 2050, without action on climate change, 1 billion people will be homeless and displaced. That's 1/8 of the world's population. And we see what climate change is doing all around the world right now. I get to be here because I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm very proud of all the work Ways and Means Committee contributed to the Kathy Castor and the climate change effort. Let me start with the electric vehicle tax credits. We are moving towards the electrification of automobility. It's the largest single piece of our climate fossil fuel contributions. So we have the tax credits from Dan Kildee for cars, with Jimmy Panetta and me for electric vans and trucks, and lots of other folks. It is wonderful when you meet somebody who says, I have to put gas in my car next October. They don't really care about the $3.99. The second big thing is the Net Zero Act, which Representative Del Benny and I have worked on for years. Let's take carbon out of the air. We've been dumping it into the air for 400 years. And again, the IPCC says we need to take 50 billion tons of carbon out of the air just by 2050 to make a difference. The technology is there, but now we have the commitment, the tax credits to make that happen. And then with John Larson, we did the Clean Hydrogen Production and Investment Tax Credit to support green hydrogen. Another thing that's really coming. And then the Energy Efficient Commercial Buildings Act, led by Earl Blumenauer and me. That's 13% of our emissions are coming from buildings. And this again puts the tax credits in place to really change it. And one other thing, there's money in this bill for fusion energy. Many people are skeptical, but when we can make that happen, we have the power not only to get rid of all fossil fuel, but also to power the carbon capture that we need. Doesn't make any sense to burn coal to take carbon out of the air, but fusion energy can do it with absolutely no carbon footprint. This is an incredibly important day, and thank you for being so patient with us. Albert Camus said, in the midst of winter, I found in myself an invincible summer. This is the invincible summer, this Inflation Action and Climate Change Reduction Act. So thank you very much. By the way, in 2014, there were two of us running for Congress whose our only message was climate change. We both got elected. She's been a champion for so many things, including is the lead on endangered species in our Congress. Let me give you the wonderful Debbie Dingell.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I have some jaw surgery, so I don't have a voice, but it doesn't mean I don't make noise. I want to tell you how great it is to be here today and the importance of today, to be here with my friend Kathy Castor, who I have worked with every day since I came to Congress on working toward these goals. And every person back here is a dear friend, that we have a vision, we have a goal, we roll up our sleeves, and you never give up. And we didn't. And I'm really proud to be here today. I'm a car girl. You all know that. Born and bred. I'm proud of it. But the fact of the matter is, transportation is the single biggest contributor to carbon emissions in the world. And we have to do something about it. I'm really proud that a year ago, we stood at the White House. I don't know if Jean's here right now, but a group of us, we quite frankly avoided some of the bullshit of Capitol Hill and brought a table together. We did. So we got it done. We got the environmentalists, we got the union workers, then we got the autos, and we did a lot of hard work. You know, figuring it out is not easy. It's hard. But we all agreed that by the year 2030, we would set a standard for sales of new vehicles to be 50%. 50% would be zero-emission vehicles. It was a big victory. And today, the Inflation Reduction Act is a transformational piece of legislation that is going to address some of these most urgent challenges facing our nation. First and foremost, not one of us is going to succeed innovation and technology to any other country in the world. We are making sure America stays at the forefront. This bold legislation today represents the single largest investment in clean energy, environmental justice, and climate actions in American history. I am very proud that this bill supports the transition to an electric vehicle future. The auto industry has demonstrated it's ready for America to become a global EV leader. And now this bill is going to institute the policy that's going to make it real. From domestic supply chains to manufacturing to consumer incentives, this bill paves the way to a shift to electrification on all fronts. Increased investments in both the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Law Program and the Domestic Manufacturing Conversion Grant Program will incentivize companies to bring those jobs back home that have been shipped overseas and keep them here. And a series of consumer tax credits, including a clean vehicle credit, a previously owned vehicle credit, and an extension of the federal income tax credit on alternative fuel vehicle refueling property, bring down the cost of electric vehicles. That makes them affordable and, I'm sorry guys, and accessible for all Americans. Okay, you've heard a little grumbling, and you know, Joe Manchin doesn't want China or America to become any more dependent on China, and neither do I. So this element may pose some challenges for industry in the short term, but in the long term, it is going to strengthen the trajectory of the industry, domestic supply chains, and American manufacturing. And at the same time, it's going to reduce emissions. And what we got to do, and I'm committed with everybody back here, I had a lot of conversations with people behind me. We're going to make sure that electric vehicles aren't a luxury vehicle, that Americans can afford the vehicles. And companies that are getting benefits in other ways need to make sure they're sharing that with the consumer. This is hugely impactful for my home state of Michigan as we support the auto industry in the shift to electric vehicles and incentivize clean energy production here in the United States. And at the same time, unions are at the table and we are creating good paying jobs. This legislation paves the way for innovation and success, not just in the immediate future, but sets the foundation for long-term sustainable growth as we continue to work towards our goal of a cleaner, safer planet. And as our next step, my colleague Jared Huffman, who's on this committee, we're going to talk to Kathy every step of the way. We're doing a mineral table. And those same groups of people who have different perspectives but have the same goal are going to sit down and figure out how we get those minerals for batteries here in the U.S. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm so proud of everybody behind me and Kathy Castor's leadership. And America is going to stay at the forefront. We put the world on wheels. Now we're putting the world in EVs. So with that, I want to introduce my dear friend who is just there for so many things. We talk about so much. He cares about this environment so much. Jamie Raskin, a hero to the country. Jamie?
Hey everybody, what a beautiful, glorious day this is, and it's not even bad that it's a little bit hot to remind us of what it is we're doing. I just wanted to say that this is the whole purpose of government in a democracy, to keep us safe and to perpetuate democracy itself and to perpetuate our species, and that's what we're doing with this very dramatic sweeping legislation to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. What a magnificent achievement that is. And I want to salute Kathy and I want to salute the whole Climate Change Task Force for keeping their eyes on the prize and moving us forward. There is no more solemn or important responsibility than we have to confront the challenge of climate change. It's a civilizational emergency we're in. We need America in the forefront. And who's going to save us? It's not the autocrats, it's not the kleptocrats around the world, it's the Democrats here in America. And I want to thank Kathy for her leadership and everybody who's been fighting so hard, like Mike and Sean and Debbie Dingle, to make sure that we keep this front and center. So thank you very much, Kathy.
All right.
I am following the amazing Jamie Raskin. Good morning to all of you. I know you know who I am, but let me say for the record, I am Val Demings, representing Florida's 10th Congressional District. You know, it has been said that leadership is the ability to take us to a place where we cannot go by ourselves. And I am honored to join the amazing people behind me, but particularly my colleague from the great state of Florida, Kathy Castor. Thank you, Kathy, for your amazing leadership. You know, this bill is really about putting American families first. That's what it's about, putting the American people first. Climate change is the greatest growth opportunity in our lifetime. To fight climate change, guess what we need to do? We need to build factories. We need to renovate buildings. We need to develop new technology. We need to build new power plants that use clean, renewable energy. All of those things are going to create jobs, millions of them. Going to create jobs, millions of them. I think that's something worth celebrating. Construction workers and factory workers and electricians and pipe fitters and mechanics and engineers. This is a good day for American families. Now we know, I'm from Florida, we know that more flooding and worse storms are coming. As the chair of the subcommittee on emergency preparedness, response, and recovery, last month and several times actually over the last year, I've met with Secretary Mayorkas along with representatives from FEMA and emergency managers throughout Central Florida. We're working hard to develop answers to extreme weather conditions to make sure that America is prepared. Lowering the cost for American families, lowering the cost for the American people. I stand before you today as the daughter of a maid and a janitor who worked hard, extremely hard, for what they had, like many of the American people do. We won't let climate change and natural disasters take away anything from America's families that work so hard to build. But fighting climate change is not just about protecting what we have. It is an opportunity in this land of opportunity. It is an opportunity to create a prosperous future where our country actually builds things again. Make it in America. We are seizing, in spite of those who tried to block this amazing legislation today, we are seizing that opportunity because we believe in a future of growth and prosperity for the American people, where every family, regardless of who they are or where they live, will have an opportunity to work hard and get a great job and follow the American dream. That's why this bill is the greatest investment in history to grow a new economy with clean jobs, clean tech, clean transit, and clean homes. Is that important to the American people? Despite those who tried, did I say that tried to block this moment today, I stand with you, I stand with my colleagues, and I am so proud to vote for the Inflation Reduction Act to bring down our costs, build a better future, and put us back on track to a cleaner and safer world. Thank you all. And with that, it is my absolute honor to now present the gentle lady from the great state of North Carolina, Representative Deborah Ross.
Well, I am so excited to be here. Now, I am a freshman, so I was not part of this amazing work, but I have seen the leadership of this chairwoman on the softball field, too. And she embodies those immortal words of Jim Valvano from NC State. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. She has done an incredible job of getting us to this point, and Democrats are delivering for the American people. This this afternoon we will pass the single greatest investment the United States has ever made to combat the climate crisis. As my colleagues have said, this is historic legislation that puts us on a path to a cleaner energy future, cutting carbon emissions, creating jobs, and lowering energy costs for American consumers. It is also a great day for North Carolina. My home state has long been a leader in clean energy, but the previous administration stymied our ability to grow this critical industry. On July 1st of this year, a 10-year moratorium on offshore wind leasing went into effect off the coasts of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. This moratorium imperils a new wave of offshore wind energy development and threatens tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. I am excited to report that our legislation includes my provision to overturn this pointless prohibition, jump-starting American clean energy development at the time when it's needed most. And thanks to this bill, the same strong winds that lifted the Wright brothers into the history books a century ago will create jobs and power homes across our state. The benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act cannot be overstated. A recent study showed that the Carolinas alone could see nearly $45 billion in capital investment and over 37,000 jobs supported annually for the next decade by participation in offshore wind development. And the domestic manufacturing jobs that will be created by this legislation extend well beyond the Southeast region, supporting shipbuilding and other supply chain manufacturing jobs across the country. Again, Democrats are delivering for the American people. The Inflation Reduction Act is an investment in clean energy and our future. It's an investment in high-quality jobs. It's an investment in the next generation. Thank you to all of my colleagues here for your work and dedication in getting this done. I now turn it over to another freshman, Melanie Stansberry from New Mexico.
Woo! All right, I am the last speaker here, so you all ready to bring it home? Yeah. Let's do it! I'm Melanie Stansberry, and I am proud to represent the great state of New Mexico's 1st Congressional District, but before I begin my formal remarks, I want everyone to take a minute to turn around and look at the people standing behind you. Those people standing back there, all of the people standing around us, have been fighting for climate action and climate justice for decades. And we would not be standing here if it was not for these amazing people who've been fighting day and night, every day for the last several years to ensure that our country takes climate action. So, today is a good day to address climate change and a good day to restore our nation as a global leader in the fight against climate change and clean energy and environmental stewardship and environmental justice. I want to thank the amazing chairwoman standing behind me, everyone on the select committee, including the staff who have been pouring their heart into this work for years to get us to this point, as well as the tremendous leadership of the Senate, yes, the Senate, and our president who got us here today. But most importantly, the people standing behind you, the people all across this country who took to the streets, who raised their voices and didn't stop even when it looked like there was no more hope. Because you made sure that we followed the science, that we communicated the urgency of this moment, and we never gave up. This is a big day for our country, and it's a big day for me personally as somebody who's worked on water and climate issues my entire life. I have to be honest, I didn't think that I would see this day in my first year in Congress. It's an emotional day for me. My people in the state of New Mexico sent me here to address the catastrophic fires, drought, and climate impacts that they are already experiencing every day. And tomorrow, I get to return home and tell them, we did it! Because, as has been said here, this is the largest single investment in climate action ever in American and global history. This marks the beginning of a new era in climate action, of clean energy jobs, of building climate resilient infrastructure in communities, and putting our communities and their justice and their equity and their jobs at the center of our work. And let me just say, as the daughter of a former operating engineer who literally helped to build a power plant that is part of the energy transition, as the daughter of a former boilermaker who worked in the oil and gas fields in New Mexico, this is deeply personal to me, and we will make sure that our communities are not left behind. Today, my colleagues and I are about to turn around in about 3 hours and head back into that building and vote to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. This bill will cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. It will make $4 billion in investment in drought resilience all across the West, building on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which invests in the resilience and the equity of our communities to build infrastructure for water and clean energy. And the Inflation Reduction Act invests $60 billion in environmental justice so that our communities have a seat at the table. Finally, I want to turn to each and every one of you who have been our climate champions, especially our young people across the country and across the world, who took to the streets, who raised their voices, who marched and demanded that we act on climate action. You never took no for an answer. You pushed us to be better, to dream bigger, to have courage, and to never take no for an answer, because you understand that everything is on the line. You gathered your talents, you put them together for a common purpose, and you put your bodies on the line. And it worked. And that is why this victory is not only ours as a nation, but is yours as the people of this country. We have a lot of work to do. This is just the beginning. We've got to get these dollars into our communities. We've got to make sure that we do the work to actually cut carbon and save our planet. But today, we celebrate this incredible victory and all of the people who made it possible. So let's do this, everyone! It's climate action time!
All right, the Inflation Reduction Act is the Pollution Reduction Act. It's the kickstart to the clean energy future. So let's go get it done.